All right, well, welcome everybody. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Ascend Federal Credit Union. They have generously sponsored our first Friday of the year. As I mentioned, this is our first Friday since March of 2020. And I remember last year we actually debated whether or not we should have the first Friday or not. And I used to pass around the microphone and I wouldn't let anybody touch the microphone. And then obviously everything shut down. So we're super excited this morning to have those of you online attend, as well as those of you here in person. So just again, welcome. Thank you to Ascend. Ascend has a short video that they'd like to show, and I'll have Courtney come up and set that up for us.
Who's eligible to join the Ascend Federal Credit Union? Them, her, him, him, all of them, her and her, and them, but not him. There's a way for you to join too. And if you live in Middle Tennessee, you want to get the most out of your money, you should. Ascend Federal Credit Union. Open your account today at ascend.org.
Perfect. Thank you again to Ascend. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to attempt to have those of you virtual. Everybody looks like they're muted right now. First of all, I want Tiffany. Tiffany, would you like to say a few words on behalf of Ascend?
Hi, sure. We're happy to sponsor. We are very involved in the chamber, and everyone that is a member of the chamber is eligible to open an account with Ascend. So if you have any questions, just reach out to me. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to have those of you that are virtual. We're going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourselves to the room of people that are here live with us today. So I'm just going to call on names. Hopefully I don't miss anybody, but I'm going to call on names and have you introduce yourself. Let's start with Joan, Patterson, Hardy, and Valentine.
Hi, I'm Joan Smith. I am a tax specialist at Patterson, Hardy, and Valentine. We handle taxes, of course, and bookkeeping and auditing.
Perfect. Thank you. Patterson, Hardy, and Valentine are a generous sponsor of our Member Connects. Yes. Thank you for being here. How about Chris Henson?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Chris Henson. I am the Director of Fund Development at Columbia State Community College.
Abby Bass.
Hi everyone, Abby Bass. I work with Williamson Inc. and I am dedicated this year to giving you as many options for events as possible, both virtual and in person. So I hope you can join us throughout the year as we navigate 2021.
Channing.
Good morning. My name is Channing Martin. I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones, and I help my clients reach financial peace. Happy to be here this morning.
Great, thank you. Christina.
Good morning. I'm Christina McClary, the owner of McClary Insurance and Financial Services, your local Allstate agency in Franklin. Excited to be here. Thanks.
Great. Walter.
Good morning. I'm Walter Teak. I'm with Eagle Soar High Career Coaching. I work with people who are trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up. It's great to see everybody.
Walter is our faithful volunteer who's usually here at the check-in desk when you arrive. So good morning, Walter. Good to see you. Kel.
Good to see you.
Kale.
I was waiting for the kale, Brian. Forgive me, everybody, for still having my video off. I'm Kel McDowell. I'm Director of Government Affairs with Williamson Inc. And as always, please feel free to be in touch if there's any way I could be of assistance on that end.
Perfect. And there's some, it says Arlie's phone. Put Arlie on the spot.
Yes, you just did. Thank you. I appreciate that. So my video is also off. I am mobile. I had a little brush with Operation Sick Child this morning.
Well, welcome. Glad you could join us. Jay Scobino.
Hey, how are you?
Good. You got to introduce yourself, Jay.
I'm Jay Strabino with Senator Blackburn's office. I'm a field representative for the Middle Tennessee area. One of the counties that I cover is Williamson County. So thank you so much for having me.
Great. Heather Hill.
Good morning. I am with United Way of Greater Nashville, and I live in Williamson County, and we have worked and partnered with Tractor Supply, and I work with the Williamson County Schools and a lot of other corporate partners in Williamson County.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. How about Mark Wolf? Put Mark on the spot too. There he is. You're muted. There you go.
Hi, Mark Wolf. And if you want 2021 to look different than 2020, you have total control of that. What we do is we actually work with you and your teams and leaders to actually see things differently, see from your employees' perspective, see all the things that have changed in their life, and to help them and you align better. We've done that consistently way before the pandemic, and we want to help you do that as well. I'm Mark Wolf from Mark A. Wolf Enterprises.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. And let's see, last but not least, how about Tori Kiefer?
Hey, how's it going? I had to run across the room quick.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm Tori Kiefer with the Williamson Herald. I'm here just kind of listening, and I'll probably write a story about this talk. So
Perfect. We appreciate it. Thanks, Tori.
Yeah.
I was just mentioning this is our first Friday since March of 2020, having people in person here at the office. So it's great.
yeah,
And now, thank you. Now I see, last but not least, he dropped off. We had Matt there, our president and CEO, but he fell off. So, well, those of you that are here virtually, feel free to drop your contact information in the chat box if you want to share contact information, as well as if you have any questions throughout the presentation today, please do so. But I want to invite up Colin Yankee with Tractor Supply, who's going to be our speaker this morning. He has an inspiring and incredible story, but he's going to come up here and share some with all of you that are here in person and here online. So let's give Colin a big welcome.
Yep. Couple things. This is gonna be very hard for me to stand behind something because I like to talk with my hands and be very animated. Hey, Martin. Good. And it's also gonna be really hard for me not to try to cough. I was sitting in church this last Sunday and had a little frog in my throat, and I was so worried about coughing. I'd be like a leopard, ostracized outside or something. So if I cough, I just tested, I'm good. It's just normal course of business here. So it's a privilege to be here today. I am Colin Yankee. I'm the Chief Supply Chain Officer at Tractor Supply Company. I've been with the company for just over 5 years. I'm responsible for all the product that it ultimately ends its way up into the stores, the teams out in our distribution centers, our international transportation network, planning the inventory, all those different kinds of things. So I'm here today because in December 2019, the leadership Brentwood class was visiting Tractor Supply for their business day. And a colleague of mine was in that class and he said, hey, can you come speak to the class? I said, sure, what do you want to talk about? He said, give an overview of Tractor Supply and you can talk about whatever you want, which was really dangerous or trusting of him to do that. But I looked at it and said, here's a group of leaders, here's a group of people from the community, whether they are a real estate agent or in the fire department or work at a big business, Fortune 500 company in Williamson County. Let me talk about leadership, something I'm really passionate about. And after that, Abby came up and said, hey, we talk at First Friday. I said, sure. That was supposed to be March of 2020. And then we kind of have tumbled into this time here today. So I guess I'm the guinea pig for this hybrid kind of model that we're gonna be doing here, but thanks for coming. If you came to hear me talk about Tractor Supply and our business and go in depth in that, you're gonna be sorely disappointed because that's not what I'm gonna do. It's all public information. I'm willing to talk about it. and many people here are very familiar with our business. Instead, what I'm going to talk about is leadership and culture. And for me, it's something I'm passionate about. I think it's something that we can all learn from each other on. And you're here because you're a leader. And I would one day like to be sitting in the audience here and hearing your take on these particular topics. Heather Hill, who was on the call there a little bit, her husband also works at Tractor Supply, so I'm sure she doesn't want to hear about Tractor Supply inventory either, because that's the team he works in. So as a matter of quick introduction, let me get this thing clicking here. Okay, I'll just use this. So I'm originally from Southern California. I'm like the quintessential California kid. For you natives of Middle Tennessee, please don't hate on me since I'm from California and everybody's coming here and moving. But I had never been east of Las Vegas in my life until I went to college. So I grew up surfing, skateboarding, BMX biking. That was it, right? But I also knew I wanted to serve in the military. I had a passion for it. And the part was practical too. My dad was a policeman. I knew I was going to have to help fund that education journey. So I applied to West Point, applied for ROTC scholarships, and if those things didn't work out, I was going to enlist in the military. I had this romantic vision of military service. I grew up in a place that we're not super connected to our history. In Los Angeles, everything's kind of newness, right? So I love living here in Middle Tennessee, being able to take my kids and explore our history. So I go off to West Point. It was a struggle for me the first year. I went from being a top student in a mediocre school to being a mediocre student at a top school, and eventually kind of worked my way up through the process, able to go out into the Army, do basically anything I wanted after that. So I got in the Army, go through all the kind of requisite training, go to Fort Lewis, Washington. September 11th occurred. They asked for volunteers to go to Afghanistan, so rose my hand for that because I thought, well, this may be my only shot, right, to go experience what the Army actually does. It was kind of Cold War era still. How wrong I was, but was able to go serve overseas and then come back. And I love the Army. I love the soldiers. I love the mission. It was great as a young man. I got to eat a lot, work out, and go camp and shoot things, right? That was really kind of an ideal job for me at the time. But just so happened, I was in this window where I could get out of the military, and I chose to get out because both my parents were ill. My mom had leukemia, my dad was caring for her, and then he had a brain tumor, and then he required full-time care at the same time. My sister was living in Europe, so came on me. So I moved back to California and started a career at Target. And I stumbled into the career supply chain. I stumbled into Target because of another West Point graduate who said, "Hey, have you ever thought about working in supply chain?" I said, "No, that sounds horrible," because it was my image of what supply chain was. He said, "Well, what about retail?" And I said, "That sounds even worse." And he said, "You're so ignorant. Let me come show you what it's all about." And he was running this distribution center in Los Angeles. And I walked in and I could smell a winner. The way people were talking to each other, the way they were what they were asking me as questions in the interview process, the cleanliness, the pride, the engagement of people, the eye contact, just the whole vibe, right? I've been on enough high functioning teams and enough dysfunctional teams in my life. I could see a high functioning team, and I knew I wanted to be a part of it. And luckily they made me a job offer and I started my career. And I was all over the country for them, did some international assignments, all those kind of things. And after about 10 years, a former boss of mine at Target became the COO at Neiman Marcus. He called me and said, "Hey, I have a job down here. Guy's retiring. Would you like to backfill him?" I said, "Sure, love this boss. One of the best leaders I've ever worked with." So I went from dealing in Tide and diapers and toothbrushes to selling things that nobody needs, Christian Louboutin shoes and women's couture. And I missed something then. I really felt like I belonged in the Army. I felt like I belonged at Target, but something was just out of sync and even Marcus for me. And not a commentary on that business, but what was missing for me was the culture. I just wasn't as connected. So then I got a call from the head of HR at Tractor Supply, and he says, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to lead our supply chain. Your name was given to me. We come check it out." And so I did, but I had a litmus test in my mind of, let me make sure I make the right decision around the culture. So what are those cultural indicators of that made me, think Target was a high performing organization, the Army was a high performing organization. Let me run Tractor Supply through this litmus test. So I asked myself, am I attracted to the brand? Tractor Supply's brand is awesome, right? I was a customer. I lived in Texas. I had 2 horses. Christine, my local store manager, would take care of me. We hired our customers in the stores. They gave really legendary service. So I was like, okay, I like the brand. I'd be proud if I was on an airplane wearing a Tractor Supply shirt and I could represent that brand to people. Then there was the growth, right? Retail is tough. It is hand-to-hand combat, fighting for wallet share, and people have so many dollars to spend. Tractor Supply, a phenomenal growth story. 80 to 100 new stores per year, every year over the last decade plus. It just crossed over $10 billion in sales this year. So massive growth. So it's a good place to be if you're in retail, right? There's retailers who are getting stronger and retailers who are dying. So that was really attractive to me as well, but it wasn't enough. So I went on Google reviews, Yelp, Glassdoor, all those kind of places, and started reading about what do people say about the company. And this is what they said. It's a good company with an excellent culture. A lot of great projects people can learn with different departments and different people. Overall, good company to work with. The culture of the company is strong, and virtually all things involved with the company evolve around GURA. So kind of its own little language internal, right? Greet, uncover, recommend, ask. It's our selling culture. This one in the middle really struck me, which was one of the best places I've worked in that I actually wanted to work hard and felt a sense of belonging in doing my part. When I made that transition from the military to Target, I felt like I belonged. I wanted to work hard and do my part. Not a knock on Neiman Marcus. I didn't feel that in Neiman Marcus, but I felt that when I came to Tractor Supply. So I tried to really decompose, like, why do I feel that? And that's the things I want to share with you today. For me, it was really about the culture. And everybody's part of a culture, or subcultures, whether it's in your family, your small business, big company you work for, your church, whatever it is, culture matters. It's what makes people feel like they belong or they don't. And I don't think there's right or wrong cultures. There's just cultures that you fit in, cultures that you don't. So this is kind of my kind of aggregation of what I think some of the elements of those cultures are. So how many of you heard the story about the 7 monkeys before? All right, so it could be 5 monkeys, could be 7 monkeys. If you've ever been Six Sigma trained or any of those kind of things, you hear this story. But for me, it was a really powerful demonstration of culture. So here's the premise. There's a scientist, and he takes these 7 monkeys and he puts them in this biosphere. And in the middle of that biosphere, they hang this really delicious looking fruit with a ladder to get to the top of it. So the first monkey goes up, says, all right, that looks good. Starts to climb up. As soon as he starts to reach for it, all this high pressure water within this biosphere sprays all the monkeys, right? Knocks the monkey off the ladder, everybody gets cold and wet, sprays them for 5 minutes. So they learn a lesson, right? Second monkey, they shake it off. He's like, oh, let me give it a shot. He starts to climb up the ladder. He goes to grab it. Same thing happens. 5 minutes of high pressure water sprays on him. So now no monkeys are going to start climbing the ladder, right? And if one of them does try to climb it, they all stop, that other monkey. They don't want to get sprayed. So after a little bit, the scientists take one of the original monkeys out and put a new one in. Never been sprayed before. What do you think that monkey does? Starts to walk over the ladder, starts climbing up, but all the other monkeys physically restrain him, hold him back. So that starts to happen. The scientist turns the hoses on, right? They're gone now. They replace another monkey, one of the originals, and put a new one in. And that monkey starts to try to climb the ladder, and all the monkeys stop him. Even the monkey who's never been sprayed and doesn't know why he's doing it, right? Eventually you do that over and over and over until you've got 7 new monkeys in there who've never been sprayed, but they won't climb the ladder. They stop others from climbing the ladder, right? It's a behavior in the culture that's just been adopted. You may not know why, it just happens. And I think unless you're thinking about your culture of the behaviors that you demonstrate, your family demonstrates, demonstrate in your church small group, whatever it is, you don't necessarily understand and question why you're doing something. So a little more academically, if you think about culture, it's the intersection between your vision and values, the people and practices you invite into your life or your team, and the work environment. And in that little pie of overlap where your culture lives is where your behaviors and your ideas come to life. So, there's this idea that your ideas, your thoughts become your behaviors become your habits, and your habits become your culture. It's in that intersection that I try to think, what makes a high-performing culture? What makes one work and what makes one doesn't? What's functional, what's not functional? So that made me think, how is retail like leading in a combat unit? And I think they share the traits of a high-performance culture. There are lots of traits that I could throw up here. I could talk on this for a couple hours because I'm pretty passionate about it, but I just chose 3. I chose 3 that I think are universal. I chose 3 that I think apply whether you're a company of 50,000 people or 5, and then a couple of behaviors under each of those different kind of ideas that ultimately become part of your culture. So the Army has this idea of mission first and people always. So the mission is supreme. The mission is important. You got to take care of your people, but it's a high stakes game, right? There are clear winners and losers. It is mortal. And they try to embed that in people's mindset. Take care of people, but always take care of the mission, right? Martin's a Ranger. He knows this as well, but there's a thing when you go through Ranger school, or if you're in the Ranger Regiment, where you make a public profession of corporate belief. It's called the Ranger Creed. And in that, you could be standing on the side of a hill in Dahlonega, Georgia, haven't eaten for a couple days, you're freezing, you're cold, and a Ranger instructor will come up and say, second stanza of the Ranger Creed, and you'll recite it. Or you're getting ready to jump out of an airplane, and you're in the ready area, getting ready to load on it, and they'll say, start the Ranger Creed. And one student will start it, and everybody else repeats. And it's a pledge that you make to each other. So you take people from across the spectrum of life, where they grew up, but they believe in the same thing, and they make a public profession to each other about it. You can look at that if you go and you say the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed, or whatever it is, a public profession of your corporate beliefs. So when I walked into Tractor Supply for the very first time, Greg Sanford, our former CEO, he met me at the door for my interview process. We walk in our lobby at our store support center in Brentwood up in Maryland Farms are these 2 like Stonehenge looking big monolith type things with our mission and values on it. That was a public profession of our corporate beliefs. So I kind of filed that away. I go in and sit down with him in his office. The very first thing he does in my interview is out of his breast pocket, pulls out a card with the mission and values on it, puts it in front of me. He spends 15 minutes talking to me about what the mission and values mean to him. Right? He hadn't even asked me a question, but he modeled it, right? So we get in the car and we drive up to Franklin, Kentucky, where we have a distribution center. Part of my interview process, we walk through the front door and hanging on these massive banners in the DC, mission values, right? And that was really powerful for me because it made a public profession. But where I think companies, corporations, people, teams get lost is when they don't see what's on the wall, model and behavior. So there are certain things that I started looking for. Are these behaviors or the values supported by the behaviors? In the military, there's this idea that leaders eat last, right? It's not written down in any book. It's not written down on any regulation, but the way it works is when it's time to eat, when chow called, you line up in rank order. Lowest first, highest ranking officer last. You take care of the soldiers first. Leaders eat last. At the same time, there's this idea of if you're the leader, you're the last one on the helicopter and you're the first one off, right? Make sure all your guys are on and you make sure that you're off the helicopter first. Not written down, not part of anything you're going to find in a book, but it's part of the culture, the behavior. That when you come in, the other monkeys teach you that, right? And it's part of that high performance environment. At Tractor, we use this model called servant leadership. Not anything new. very well known out in industry and out in different kind of organizations and churches. But normally have this hierarchical org chart. On our org charts, the CEO is at the bottom, customers at the top, and then our job is to remove obstacles for the people who serve the customer. That's all we think of all the time. Servant leadership. How do we serve? The fact that we don't call our main office a headquarters, we call it a store support center, is indicative of those ethos in action, right? We try to really model that. Second idea, you got to embrace change, right? High performing organizations are going to have external things happen. I mean, it's great to be here this first time. We're kind of hybridly gathered together and online as well. Nobody planned for this experience. It's been earth shaking. There's been some winners, some losers in it. All unfortunate, with that, but change happens. There's this concept in the military that the enemy gets a vote, or no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? You have all these great plans, stuff happens. I chose this picture because I love it. It's from a combat outpost called Firebase Restrepo in the Korangal Valley in Afghanistan, 173rd Airborne there. The average age of the soldiers in that picture is 20 years old. And the young man in the flip-flops and the I Heart New York pink boxer briefs was napping and sleeping on his break when their fire base got attacked. Very, very violent place in Afghanistan. And this 19-year-old young man puts on his body armor, a pair of flip-flops, and goes man's front line, right? He didn't even be told to do it. The organization embraced change, right? The enemy got a vote. Well, that happens, it's happened for me in retail. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I'm looking around the age in the room here. Most of us remember when we didn't have our lives on the phone and quick access to communication and information and frictionless shopping, all those other kind of things. It happens, right? It's happened to my business and we've had to adapt. Same thing last March, as Brian was telling his story about not passing on the mic, the world changed, world closed. Happens. You either embrace it or you don't. You always have to be ready for that change. So the behavior, when I think about high performing organizations and change, there's a couple of things that I think help drive fast yet aligned action in times of uncertainty. There's this concept in the military called the commander's intent. And it's very simply put that every person is supposed to know their boss's objective, and you're supposed to communicate your objective 2 levels down. So if I'm a platoon leader in Afghanistan, I'm supposed to know my company commander's what he wants to achieve and what the battalion commander, what he wants to achieve. And I'm supposed to communicate that 2 levels down. And what that means is, in the absence of direction, or when things don't happen like they're supposed to happen, you can use initiative to achieve the overall objective and support your boss, right? I got a boss, everybody here serves somebody. I look at my job as relieve my boss's burden, and I can do that by carrying out his intent as best as possible. So Tractor Supply, when I walked in, I saw these messages about empowerment. Over our main conference room, there's this message that says every team member is empowered to do whatever it takes to support our customer, right? It's kind of like Notre Dame football, and they slap it going out of the locker room. That's what it is for us. In our stores, if you walk in, it says satisfaction guaranteed. Every team member here is empowered to do whatever it takes to support our customer. It's a pretty simple message, right? So with servant leadership, we're here to support people on the front line. If you got a problem, use your discretion and take care of the customer. You will never get in trouble for doing it, even if it costs us money, right? If your intent was good and you were trying to support the company, that's all that matters. It helps drive that fast and aligned action. Second behavior, I think, for handling change is building learning organizations. Relentless dissatisfaction. So you're never good enough, right? In the military, whether it's you do a training event or you actually have an actual mission that you do, you always perform what's called an after action review. Everybody sits down and you talk about what you need to sustain, what went well, and what do you need to improve. And you're critical of yourself. You embrace the red, right? That's how you get better. And it's how the new monkeys who come in don't make the mistakes of the previous monkeys, right? And you transfer that corporate knowledge over and over and over again, which is why I remember sitting kneeling in the grass, getting ARs delivered to me or being part of them. And I remember thinking, this is how I can learn the lessons, the oral history, and the doctrinal history of people who've come 100 years before me. So I don't make the same mistakes, right? You're always learning. This is a picture I took at a store in North Georgia a few weeks ago. I'm responsible for inventory. I'm responsible for product being in stock. We had a cold snap, and we obviously were out of hats. We sold a lot of them. Right? I sent a picture back actually to one of the people who's on the call, her husband, and we're talking about why don't we have this product? What happened? What was the functional breakdown? How do we plan to get better? How do we change our systems? How do we use new technology to make that happen? We just embrace the red, right? Don't get your feelings hurt. It's okay. We're all talented. We got to fix it for the customer. Third idea is that your only sustainable competitive advantage is your talent. That business changes, business models change, but if you hire smart, really talented people and you develop them, that's your competitive advantage. And if you are a party of one, it's your responsibility to develop yourself. The way the military does this is through training, different assignments, and then self-development. So there's three kind of pillars. I walked in Tractor Supply and I asked about development, and this is what I was shown. 70% in challenging assignments, 20% development relationships, and 10% coursework. You get trained on the job, but only if you're being coached throughout that. Actually, right before I started this talk here, the gentleman who runs our stores would call me, and we were talking about a challenging assignment for a person on my team and a person on his team that we want to partner up together. It's just got to be part of your kind of constant thinking about how you're coaching. So the behavior that stems out of that idea, for me, is situational leadership. I think people who haven't been connected to the military in some way have this idea that's very hierarchical. That's not the military I experienced. There are people who do experience that. It wasn't what I experienced. What I experienced was this situational leadership, where my leaders treated me differently based upon where I was at, on my competence and my motivation. So when you have somebody who's low competence, brand new in a job, doesn't have a lot of training, they haven't proven themselves, but they're highly committed, you can be very directive. If you move up and you have somebody who you expect, they've been trained, they know what they should be doing, they have some competence, but they're not showing commitment, that's coaching, right? You got to move them out of that square, one way or the other. Either in the wrong job or they're not going to make it, right? You have somebody who has high competence or moderate competence, but their commitment is variable. That's when you as a leader are supportive. It's kind of like you give people enough rope to hang themselves. So you're saying, you know what the expectation is. I'm here to support you. The burden is on you to perform. Where I want to be and where I want my entire team to be is in that green square, where I can delegate, highly competent and highly committed. That makes being a leader the easiest job in the world, right? And I want my boss to put me in that square as well. So that's the military that I experienced. When I came to Tractor, there was this idea of always living in the learning zone. And I can show you a thing that has all of my people on it that shows where they're at as far as performance. So kind of their comfort zone. They're experts in a lot of different functions. But how do I push them out into the learning zone? How to give them those challenging assignments? I don't want to push them out in the panic zone where they're freaking out all the time and they're burned out and they can't handle it, right? That's not the goal. The goal is to kind of like building muscle, right? You're always stretching, always building it up, keep them in the learning zone. So there are probably, I think anybody in here, Jay could get up and give a talk on his experience in the same kind of way, right? You all could do the same thing. This is just my personal take. When I think about high performing culture, I think ideas have consequences and behaviors build culture. Everybody's got one. What's yours, right? And to me, the highest performing cultures, the winning cultures, whether it's a sports team, if you listen to Nick Saban talk about his culture, if you think about winning organizations that are relentlessly dissatisfied, I think they have shared beliefs, they embrace change, and they invest in their talent. If you do those three things, I think that's really sustainable for yourself or for your business. That's just my take on it. So all in with this, because I promised Brian I'd stick it into 30 minutes, and I think I'm getting really close here. All right. So there's a very famous management kind of guru, Peter Drucker, who once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what he meant by that was, you can have the best strategy in the world, fanciest PowerPoint deck, paid some consultant to do it, whatever it is. If your culture is not strong, you don't have the right talent, you don't have that right ethos involved, it's going to reject it, right? It's not going to take that culture. It's not going to take that strategy and do anything with it. When I go into a team and I'm assessing, I'm looking at the culture, but then I look at the strategy next. I look at the budget, and then I look at the strategy, because where your treasure is, where your heart is, right? And so if you have a strategy, I try to juxtapose that against your culture, and then are you investing in it? Your budget could be time, may not be money, but where you spend your time, where you spend your money. And that to me is an indicator of it's going to be successful. When those things aren't in alignment, things fall apart. So that takes you from being high performing to moderate performing or being gone. All right, so that was kind of my take on high performance cultures. We got, I think, some time for questions if there are any. If not, then I'll shut up and sit down. So. Does anybody here have questions for Colin? Yes, sir.
Two things. I went to a couple motivational speaks. I really like what you were talking about with about the leadership. But two things I took away that you get from this is inspirational dissatisfaction. You sound like y'all are never satisfied. You're inspired to do better. It's a tremendous motivator. And I can see why Tractor Supply does it so well in that. And the other one, and it's only two things. These were week-long motivational things that I went to. And the other one was lack of feeling appreciated. It's the cause of all negative attitudes. Y'all go out of your way to make people feel appreciated. I know people that work there, and I know that's true. If you wonder why an employee's negative, your wife's negative, or whatever, try to find out why they don't feel appreciated. And y'all do a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you said there. It really is great.
Well, I appreciate that, and I learned a lot. Like we have a new CEO, Hal Lawton. Greg Sanford was our CEO for a long time. Before that, Jim Wright. Before that, Joe Scarlett, and he's just made it even better. I can publicly endorse that. And I think to your point, we're all leaders, and you got to think about how people feel appreciated. Like I know my wife's love language is something totally different than mine. Right? So, yes, sir.
What's the best way that a leader can
dysfunction? I think it takes one drop of oil to spoil the well, right? So if you have a dysfunctional culture, it's people, right? It's so you got to think about your people. A little bit of disclosure. I had a distribution center that wasn't performing very well. The kind of bad news bears group, and they just had this kind of mentality of they were always going to lose, right? Kind of a little bit of victim mentality versus an accountable mentality. And the leader went in there and he was like, I'm gonna have to change over a lot of people. And my coaching advice to him was, don't do it too aggressively, right? This is a long marathon. You got here. Here's my expectations. I support you in that. But you'll know when you can change the culture when you're moderate to average performers, you've got them on your side, right? So in our case, we have break rooms, people sit around and talk. And when your high performers, they're gonna perform, right? Your low performers, they're gonna be low performers. If you can get that middle and move them up and convince them through your behaviors and through your actions, through your accountability on both ends of the spectrum, through your rewards and recognition, then the culture can start to change, right? So that'd be my starting point. Yes, ma'am. Oh yeah. Yeah. For the folks on the Zoom call, the question was, when thinking about promoting somebody or moving them up into a different position, do you focus more on the internal candidates and talent pool or more on the external? I think it's both. It's hard to say. I think it's important to index towards internal talent to reward people, but also the external can bring you something that you didn't expect, right? And look at things a different way. They're a different monkey coming from a different biosphere, right? And they'd be like, why are you doing it that way? A lot of times when I'm thinking about it, I'm looking at the technical and tactical proficiency, the skills that somebody has, or the leadership ability. I have a bias towards internal. And I have a bias towards internal because it's really easy to have somebody interview well who's all show and no go, right? But the people you live with every day, the people you've been in the trenches with, you know all their warts and wrinkles and problems, right? So I try to mentally discount and make that choice. It depends on the job, though, for me.
When you're opening a new location, do you require to have someone there that's been part of the organization? Or do you ever have all new hires for a new location that are then trained in the culture and the philosophy and the values?
Yeah, we have a pipeline of development for people who are, if we're going to go open a new store, they know when they get in that pipeline that they're destined to go kind of evangelize, right? They're kind of going out there and planting those new locations. When it's a big operation like a distribution center where we employ 600-700 people, we try to make sure that the key leader positions are filled with some previous experience, so they know the technical side, so those don't become obstacles, and they also can model the way, right? Yeah. So Mark.
Talk to us about emotional intelligence, right? That's one of my favorite leadership topics. I heard you talk about it last week at a local chamber. You guys train on that? You value in that? What's the TSC take?
Yeah, we do. We train on kind of the IQ side and the EQ side of emotional intelligence. Really trying to do two things. For the leader, how do you deliver good messages on coaching and development, understanding root cause for people? Because a lot of people just don't like conflict, right? How do you proactively and productively handle conflict and handle somebody's performance? And understanding where people are at so you can meet them where they're at to coach them up. And so we do a lot of role plays in that. It is really awkward at first. I'm not the best at it. But we actually have a thing that we give a lot of our leaders, especially in our distribution center, it's called a dialogue deck. And every week in one of their production meetings, they pull out a card and it's a scenario and they walk through that. And they role play it and then they critique each other on the spot on how they handle it. So they can kind of collectively sharpen each other.
We're not going to do that. Yeah. One of the things I was just curious about, when you talk about culture, and I think we've all struggled in the last year with how to continue to develop culture, but can you talk a little bit about some of the things that Tractor has done? I know you talked about budget, the investment that Tractor has made into your associates across the country. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we started this time last year, we had 30,000 people in our company. As of yesterday, we had about 45,000. So we brought on a lot of new people. Plus, there's just a natural turnover you have. Our work from home debate at this time last year, we were not a work remote kind of culture. We wanted people to be connected, have FaceTime, have that sense of belonging, right? And we were very hesitant to move into that work from home environment because we're like, what do we lose, right? We navigated through the change of the business, I think, very well because of the previously established relationships and that connection to the culture. At the same time, we've invited new people in, and there's people who on my team who I've never seen face to face, I've never met, maybe haven't moved yet, and so I can't say that we got figured out because it's still a concern for me. We've just done other things, so we send things to people's homes, right? Surprise and delight when it comes to things from Tractor Supply. There's always the financial side of things, right? But not everybody can do that from a reward and recognition standpoint. We have spent a lot of time thinking about how do we use the technology to film messages and communication both up and down the chain. So I film a lot and send out messages to people who may be working at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? Or the other way around of we'll do kind of huddles where we'll do quick get to know you intros and kind of fun interviews and things like that to bring some of that work hard and have fun element to the environment. And then, as leadership team, we've been really out there. We do travel a lot. We don't expect our team members to go do things that we wouldn't be willing to do ourselves. And so we go out there and try to connect with them in the field.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got it.
Any other questions here? Let's see if there's any. Well, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin, for being here today. We really appreciate it. Let me just quickly check the chat online, see if there's any questions that we've missed. Nope, it doesn't look like it, so it's great. Well, thank you all again for being here for our first in-person hybrid First Friday. We got one more question, Martin.
Sorry, will the deck be available to download?
Sure, we can make sure that gets sent out to everybody, and this was also filmed or recorded, so we can send out the recording for all of you. But please join us again next month for First Friday. Check our events calendar at williamsonchamber.com. And thank you all for attending this morning.